Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the October 23rd meeting of the Planning Policy Commission. First thing on the agenda is approval of the minutes, and we have the minutes from two meetings. So we're going to look at them individually. So on the minutes for September the 25th, does anybody have any additions or improvements? Do I have a second? Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The minutes of the October 2nd meeting. Does anybody have any, I assume you've all read it. Does anybody have any changes, corrections? Do I have a motion to approve? Do I have a second? Second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion's carry. Tonight we're going to have a public hearing based on the Land Use Code amendments for the transportation concurrency, and we're going to open it up with a presentation from Dave Faber, the Deputy Development Director. And so, Dave, if you want to present you to us, we would appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. I have a PowerPoint slides to go through, as well as the code of text that is in your packet, and the idea is to flip between the two. So thanks. Charlie Bush, the director, and I were here about a month ago to talk with you and give you a broad overview of transportation concurrency. And I'm here tonight to continue that discussion, and then we're here with a package of code amendments to start from that broad overview and then kind of fill in the blanks and create the actual code text that would implement that overview we talked about last month, September 25th. So why don't I just get started? Oh my, I shouldn't have pushed that. Let's try starting different. Here is a slideshow. So what is concurrency? If you recall, the state law does define and require that cities have to do transportation concurrency. It's the provision of improvements at the time of development, or that a financial commitment is in place to complete those improvements within 6 years. So you have to have that linkage of development and traffic improvements within 6 years. What concurrency gives us, the local jurisdiction discretion, is the second bullet, which is how we want to implement this law, and secondly, the adoption of a certain level of service, or I kind of call it congestion level of service on the roads. And that's part of what all this discussion is about, is the second point. Why are we doing this? This is kind of the third update. It was first adopted in 1998, and then another process started in 2007 or so and completed in 2010. And this is kind of the third update of the concurrency regulations. Some reasons are that there's a desire I think for all city development process to streamline the process. That's largely why some reorganization of departments happened a couple years ago. And then secondly, the central plan has a new vision of development, and we like to kind of create this one ordinance to fit in and help implement the development of the central plan vision that we all talk about. Second, there's a need for technical traffic computer updates that are needed every 2 or 3 years, and it's actually been 7 years since that was last done, so that's needed. And third, impact and mitigation fees are what help fund development's impact on public improvements, and those are in need of regular updates. So there's some reasons why we're doing that. Some key points of this ordinance that's in your packet, you'll see, is we'd like to simplify the process so that, I guess today we have traffic engineers who have to run traffic models and evaluate development impacts and go site specific. We'd like to change that so that a person pays in this new process one fee to the city, and then the city takes on the responsibility to do that traffic modeling and traffic engineering and figuring out the solutions to meet this concurrency requirement. So that gets at the holistic review. Today we look at site-specific. We'd like to go to the second, the idea of looking at a citywide level of service solution rather than site-specific. I've talked about updating traffic models. I've said that the city is saying we're going to take the responsibility. If you pay us the money, we're going to go out and build the roads and help, and so that the city does meet our level of service standards. So now here's where I flip to the text, and I'll do that now. Here goes. And Chris, where did that? Right there? There it is. So the section that is in the land use code that's being asked to amend is IMC, Issaquah Municipal Code 18.15, which is right here. And at the top of each section that has large changes, I put in these blue boxes with a little summary discussion, and the idea is to, I'm going to touch on those, and if you have questions or want to comment, I'm not going to go through every item, but the first item under purpose talks about one sentence added here at the bottom to get at why are we changing to a more simplified system. And that talks about, instead of the site-specific, we're going to a citywide holistic system, and the proposal is to create a trip bank so that the city has created, and we'll get into this later, but if we create a list of road improvements that creates a certain amount of trip capacity on the overall city system, so you have roads and they're not all full, there is available capacity, then if each development fits within this big bank of trips, which is several thousand trips, and a building of this size would generate, say, 50 or 100 trips. All the development would have to do is say, we fit within this large trip bank, we take a drawdown from this account, and we pass. So that's greatly simplifying the process versus what it is today. So that's the discussion of the purpose section here. The second section is definitions. Several are changed to
Question
address.
yeah. So when we go to the simplified system, which conceptually is good, how do you assure that there's enough funds to do what you need? So if you say you're going to take a flat fee, and then you do your modeling and you find out what you need, and you were, your flat fee, you're way off base. You put all that burden back on the city. So then how's the city going to cover that if they've already...
That's a good question.
Developer paid a flat fee and they're free now.
So this is where it's an, I guess, an integrated system. It's a combination of private funds that come from this concurrency system as well as public funds, and those two sources go to fund the Transportation Improvement Plan, the TIP. So you all see the TIP come past you. It's the combination of those two pots that need to fund the improvements within that 6-year time frame of concurrency. Does that answer? That's the framework. And then...
Beforehand?
Yes.
Estimate how much it's going to cost now so that when they come in, the flat fee is based on what we're estimating the cost to be ahead of time.
Thanks, Trish. That is a very important part. Yes. It's
my question in follow-up to that would be, are those fees, I mean, can they be altered by the council should, for some reason, grant funding dry up or the estimates for the TIP be low?
to some extent. So, and we're talking the private side of this funding mechanism. That's the concurrency part. By state law, we cannot charge no more than 100% of the developer's impact, their impact. We can't say, oh, we want to get 1.5 times of what your impact is. So we are limited to that. The fee can be no higher than that. Council does have the choice of saying, well, we think that's too high. We want to have a lower than 100% recovery, but then someone else has to pay that amount, which transfers it to the public side.
Yeah, and my concern would be, I mean, if we're already mostly at D, sometimes at E and F levels of service, that kind of denotes that we have been underestimating the impact to begin with. So my concern is, are we reevaluating how we're determining those impacts to make sure that we're not continuing this on that downward slope?
And I'm going to go through some code and then flip over to the level of service discussion and some slides in a bit, and I think that gets at that. And I'll caution you that gets at several hours of work that have happened at the City Council here in June, and especially the July work sessions, where Torsten Lenau of CH2M Hill, our traffic modeling consultant, has done all that work. So I'm here to summarize that tonight, but I'll try my best on that.
Right, and to follow that, so with the concurrency, you've got 6 years. So the city taking that responsibility, then they've got to get to it in 6 years, and then 6 years from now, the cost of those improvements have probably changed a bit.
So there's two answers to that. It's within 6 years of the impact of the development. It's not that within 6 years of tonight or, adoption. It's within, so if a development, and this projection is to the year 2030, which coincides with the central plan's vision. So you could say, so if a development doesn't come in for 10 years, and then it'd be another 6 years after that. And then second, I guess, it's very strong, I guess, requirement, or it's just part of the assumption here that this traffic model needs to be updated every 2 to 3 years to reflect changing conditions. We're not going to, if something gets adopted, the idea is not to adopt it once and just walk away. It has to be updated every 2 to 3 years to take the new development, the new traffic, any new regional traffic, and just update the model, and then reassess what TIP road improvements are needed to keep those LOS, D, E, and F, intersections at whatever level we all choose it should be. So that may be answering your questions for now. So back to the definitions here, they are changed to reflect the simplified concurrency as to creating kind of trip banks. So an overall bank of capacity. This builds off the current system where we have concurrency approval processes, certificates, concurrency intersections. We're going to talk about those intersections. They're largely those that are signalized intersections throughout the city, and there's about 80 of them. Modeling here today is required, case by case. This is changing to talk about that 2 to 3 year update that I was just talking about. And down here is trip banks, the definition I was just talking about. We did receive one comment letter ahead of the meeting, and there was one point in that letter that talked, I don't know if it was in that letter or a different conversation, but can we see a definition of trip ends? Because there's a discussion of trip ends throughout here. So I'll have at the end slide a proposal to add trip ends, which essentially says it's the beginning or the end of a trip. It's the origin or the destination. So that'd be proposed to add to the...
Really quickly, just looking at IMC 1815-220, old paragraph 10, new paragraph 10, old paragraph 11. Just noticed a typo there. It looks like a 1 hour time period between 4 and 6 p.m. Oh, wouldn't that be a 2 hour period between 4 and 6 p.m.?
Actually, no, it's intended to be that between a 2 hour period. It's the 1 hour in that 2 hour time when traffic is the busiest. So it's intended to reflect the busiest 1 hour during 4 to 6 p.m.
Okay.
So it could be 4:15 to 5:15, or something like that. Running
David?
through the text.
David,
Yeah.
can you go back over the trip bank again?
Sure.
And we don't have one now, right?
Correct. Correct.
So what are we going to start with?
So this is the,
I mean, up to this point, we've been generating trips based on modeling.
Right.
Now, all of a sudden, we're going to start with a bank of trips. From where?
okay, and here's from where. So we, the city, are modeling the new development to 2030 in the city and adding a list of traffic improvements, the TIP list, and seeing how much traffic capacity is available if all those when all those TIP road projects are built and all the development happens, there will be a certain amount of extra trips left on the road, and that's the trip bank. So the city is saying that's the trip bank. Saying it a different way? No?
I don't understand, I guess. I'm a simple sailor, barely read and write, so.
Uh-huh.
Are you,
Chip, the city's modeled what? The roads that we have now?
No, we are modeling the roads, say, in 2030, the year 2030, when the central plan is built out, right? Because the central plan has a horizon of 2030, and so much growth will happen by that time. And in the year 2030, so many different road improvements will be built by that time. So we are modeling right now, so this is where Torsten plugs in the model. He says, we assume there are, X thousand number of new people and new jobs on the road system in 2030. We add these new road projects to accommodate this new growth, and there's extra capacity left over because the roads aren't all filled up at the end of that process. And that creates the capacity that are to do that.
Can,
And say another way. I'll try a third way.
can I,
Yeah.
so if we modeled the existing system with the development that's existing and the road existing, could essentially there be a capacity like a bank or maybe a negative bank, and then the improvements that we're doing is just adding to that bank if there's no development? If there's development, then that kind of goes down. Is that, am I understanding that correctly?
That's the right idea, I think.
Okay.
I want to rephrase my description too.
Okay.
Here's try number 3. So I'm saying there's this much growth that's going to happen by 2030. And so many thousand trips are going to be taken up to accommodate that growth. So as that growth happens, I'm going to go this way now. We've got this much trip capacity to accommodate all that growth. And as each development happens, it just takes a new building. You got this much capacity. One new building takes this much. So the account says we're thinking it's like 8,000 trips or so, something like that. 8,000. A new building takes 50 trips. So you subtract from this overall capacity 50 trips. The next building comes in, here's 100, and it just goes smaller and smaller, so that by the year 2030, for example, we've drawn down, or we've reduced that bank account of trips, but we never reach that full capacity there.
I understand what you're saying. I can't say I
Thank
agree
you.
with it, but I at least understand what you're saying. The problem is, what level of service are you putting in there? Are you having it all Fs, and to get all this in,
No.
how do you do that? How do you determine that?
We're about to get to that place.
Okay.
You ready to go
Okay.
just about there? No. No?
I think, Carl's problem with the assumption is that what we're doing on our own, the TIP, is going to give us greater capacity than that we would have much better traffic in the future to have some capacity. And I think that's the problem where we're getting to, is how does all of a sudden it get on the positive side? That's the feeling I'm getting.
Right, and one of the examples, to key on that, Bill, is the part of the central cornerstone of the central plan is that if you put housing in the core where there's no housing now, right now, one of the peaks is pretty empty because we're not using the roads in both peaks because there's nobody living there, that there's no trips that come home at night to, like Gilman Boulevard and the places where nobody lives. So if you put housing there, some housing there, all of a sudden you're using the roads more evenly in the AM peak and the PM peak, instead of just putting more commercial there that would make it more crowded during key shopping times. We're trying to use the capacity right now that we're not using by putting housing there that would shift the trips a little bit. Also multimodal, we're trying to put more of that in to get some trips off the road and into buses and vans and pedestrian and bike. So we're trying to do different things to take some of the capacity out of the road that's there now and allow for more uses and options to help us with that. So it's not just single occupancy vehicles there.
Correct.
Not sure
There's
that
an
helped at
assumption
all,
of
but there's
different land uses and more
Right.
non-motorized. Well, not a lot more, but yes, more. Yes. Built into the central plan vision. Should I keep talking and see if you come around as I go along here?
Keep on.
Okay. I'm tempted, I'm about ready to flip to the LOS, the level of service slides that get at this discussion, so why don't I do that about now? So there's several slides here, and this is where we try to summarize a lot of the work that the city council's done with consultants presenting for hours and hours. We'll try and get through this. So first of all, what is level of service? We've got A, B, C, D, and E, and F. These are kind of what I like, kind of layperson's descriptions. A, B, C, and D are good conditions where vehicles are probably getting through the intersections, and it feels good when you're out driving the car. LOS, level of service E, is where the road is approaching the capacity of the road. You may be waiting through more than one signal cycle. And F, the road is over capacity. There's definitely some movements waiting through more than one cycle, and that's where I say you start pounding on the steering wheel, getting frustrated. What I've heard in this discussion is that, it's not like a report card where A is great, F is bad. You want to use the full capacity of the investment that we've all made in these public roads. So to have something at A might be actually underutilizing the road. You want to fully utilize the road. So D, C, D, perhaps even E is using the capacity of the road. So these are the measuring devices that are in our methodology. Many people use now. There. So the work that has been happening through this process has looked at 5 different model runs. So these are traffic model runs. We can look at LOS service, and then we've got maps that show the different intersections throughout the city for each of these. And if that sends you over the edge, let me know. But look at that. So today we started with what are the existing conditions out on the road today. And I did some, and it showed that LOSE is in yellow, and the red right here, E and F. So today the system has two operating at E and 2 operating at F. The next bar above said if we built no new roads between now and 2030, but added the growth from the central plan, the whole comp plan, traffic would decline greatly, just terribly, so that there would be a total of 27 intersections that are operating at E or F, just, way over capacity. So that just gave us a feel. And then we had the modelers run 3 models, kind of 3 different scenarios. Model run 1 is shown here with kind of today's TIP with a couple projects loaded up and the growth, which results in 17 failures. So if you kind of go on the path of the existing TIP list of road projects, there would be more failures than how it operates today. And then we said, well, what if we just want basically everything to work? We went to Model Run 2, which said, let's just build out every intersection almost regardless of whether you pave 12 lanes wide or whatever. We can achieve no failing intersections and 4 at LOS E. But the cost estimate that the group did approached something like $400 to $500 million. So, you can solve things. It was great cost, and, for example, Front and Sunset would be one. What does it take to fix Front and Sunset? Well, a person could take away the parallel parking on Front Street and go 2 lanes each way. Perhaps if you want 3 lanes going each way, you can destroy Front Street. So, yes, a person could get to this place, but it just doesn't seem practical. And then we went to option 3, which said, well, can we find a place in between? And that is where the administration is recommending we go to. And we've had this discussion at council. They've not made a final decision yet on that LOS. But there's been discussion about this, which has 3 intersections operating at E and 3 intersections operating at F. So it starts to become somewhat similar to how operations work today. That's the summary, and then we go into these maps are ones that describe each of the 5 runs I just ran through, and specifically throughout the city where those failures would be and how the LOS, level of service, operates. The red are the Fs, and the yellow would be the LOSE. If you have questions, you can just look at these. This is where it goes to 27 failures if we add on all the growth of the central plan and no improvements. And you see how things start popping up and failing all over. And then action results. This was model run number 1. Start seeing the failures. This was 17. And then if we fix everything, we can practically fix with unlimited money, changing the community character, for example. Different map, but it shows greens everywhere, except for 2 up by Issaquah Falls City Road area. And again, down here at Front and Sunset. And then action run 3, which is where the administration is at, is looking at the 3 at the 12th, well here, we can see the eastbound off-ramp of I-90 at 900, 12th, and 56. Front and Sunset continues, the drive at Talus, and then the 2 intersections up at Black Nugget Road, Fall City, and Highlands Drive in Fall City. So this is the text that represents where we're recommending now, is that the LOS intersection shall be LOSD, but then it also recognizes up to 6 intersections, and in the text, I think we do specify those 6 that we just saw, can operate at LOS, ERF at any point in time. But then there's this important provision, as long as the weighted average of all the other intersections we're looking at are maintained at LOSD. So the average throughout the whole city stays at D, but you have these spot intersections that fall below D. And then in the comp plan policies we're going to get to in a bit, we've placed 3 criteria to show how we arrived at the support for these 6 intersections to be below D. And there they are, that congestion is generated primarily by traffic outside the city. So the discussion there was, we all know there's regional traffic coming from the plateau, coming from South King County. Is it Issaquah's primary job to solve the problems of these outlying areas? This would say lesser priority. Low benefit to cost ratio, I think, starts talking about the example I gave of Front and Sunset. Does it really make sense to, at great cost, not get a lot of benefit or change in community character? And then geographic or environmental limitations, if there are wetlands or stream buffers, you might have a physical constraint to prevent us from improving intersections. So these are the reasons how we are proposing that these 6 intersections would be below D. And again, shows this map that we were just looking at.
Do you have a copy of the TIP? Or at least, can you give us an idea, refresh our memory of what great improvements are going to bring us down to the correct level?
Well, it's a timely question. In fact, these boxes with the numbers and up here represent the TIP projects. And I can try and describe some key ones. What?
They're in you're talking about the ones that are new that will be on the new TIP. They're in the comp plan discussion tonight. The map is in there.
Okay, so they're in there.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. That answer. Any other questions? No?
Any questions, comments? I think we all have to realize that traffic is here, and if we have a city that's connected by, surrounded by hills that we can't really do anything about, and any other city that you go to has bad traffic. At least there is thought process that goes behind this and how they put it together. Whether it's going to happen, I have no idea. But again, it's lack of money that's preventing major improvement. I do remember a couple years ago when we went through this whole process, and I asked, what's the Torsen? I said, if you do all of these projects, will you have wonderful traffic? And he said, no. Even with everything that's done on the TIP.
Thank you.
And so it's still going to be a problem. But at least do you understand what they're doing, and do you have any questions or comments on?
Well, I do have one. You mentioned, things outside our borders are definitely causing traffic, especially unincorporated areas of the county as they grow. Does the county help fund any of those remediation measures that we take to fix the problems outside our borders, or are we kind of left on the hook?
I think not directly right now. In the past, we have had some interlocal agreements or interaction with King County in the past.
We had the reciprocal for a while.
We did have a reciprocal traffic impact fee agreement for a while, back in the 90s, that a development in King County would give us some money, and we would in turn give them some money. But for reasons I don't recall, that lapsed.
Once Sammamish incorporated, that was, some of it was coming from the north, but that was still an issue with Klahani, is that nobody would fix the roadway. How soon we forget, the Issaquah Fall City Road, and we couldn't get King County to help us with that. And so that became an issue of when we were trying to annex them, is would they help us with that roadway? And now when Sammamish decided that they were going to take it, we made them, we had an interlocal with Sammamish that they will help us fix it. So, yeah, the county hasn't had any money for a long time to help us with those kinds of things.
There have been suggestions that we could reach out to the King County, or especially City of Sammamish, in interlocal agreement
Right.
discussions to
Right.
talk about sharing impact fees between jurisdictions. So that's a
Right.
possibility. I think
Right.
it's way beyond the scope of what we're talking about, but that is a way to address that, help address it.
No, and that's really good to know the history too, just in terms of knowing where the county has been on these, and that it's more, sounds like a funding drying up issue at the county level that led to kind of the end of that interlocal.
Right.
Question. Excuse me. Excuse me. Are these anticipated levels of service, is this 2030 or now? I may have missed that somewhere.
This would be in 2030.
I can tell you a couple spots up there where I frankly live that are that way now. So I'm curious how they've gone through from 4 to 6 o'clock at night, the intersection at Falls City Road and 238 is a backup every night, every single night.
Right there.
And yes,
Uh-huh.
and it's not one light, it can be 2 or 3. So that's now. I'm curious how they've gone about, because that is one of those outlying areas that are impacting.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're right at the edge of what is unincorporated King County now, or Sammamish down the road, whatever. So I don't know. I wonder if that's underestimated for 2030.
Well, I guess right now it shows it's still at F, red spot. This does assume that there are improvements happening throughout the city. You presume Sammamish will do some improvements as well. So these are the improvements, I guess, that can be supported for concurrency, and then we start talking about traffic impact fees, but I guess there are other road improvements that could happen to help address that.
So I got a question. So you got run 1, 2, and 3, and see if I state this right. Run 1 was implement the current TIP, and that's what you would have.
Right.
And then 2 was unconstrained, so,
Yes.
heaven
Yeah.
appears. And 3 was arbitrary, it's something to keep something where it was more, because the run 1, what it showed was going back to the question before, implementing the TIP and the growth and everything, traffic's going to get worse. That's run 1. So, it's with the plan in place, and as development, if development occurred as planned and the TIP occurred as planned, traffic's getting worse,
Yes.
right? So then you created run 3 that says we want to keep it the same, but there's got to be a dollar in there. There's got amount in there. There's got to be something in there that it says, oh yeah, we can keep it that way, but is it a fantasy? Or is that,
No,
how did they get to that, and where is that coming from?
So there's a dollar amount. It's in draft form now. We know it's I can't remember how much it is, but it's in this. Today the TIP is about $100 million or so, and I think it's going to somewhere around $250 million, something like that. It's been talked about at the council meetings, and I can pull the documents, but it's something like that. And I think I'd like to take a chance and show, and it does. This map does show those additional improvements that were shown in the central plan. So, for example, those dollar amounts would go to create a greater grid system down in the core of the central plan area here, just east of SR 900. So there's road improvements shown here. There's the 12th Avenue overpass right here, new project. The new road heading east out of Pickering Place that, with the Costco development agreement, would help fund that. Improvements up at each of these lights up here to help that area function. And then improvements to the front and I-90 interchange here. Those are some key ones.
Right.
Get that.
Where would all that money come from?
Well, it would come from two pots. It would come from the impact fees generated by development, and the second one would come from the public side, which is what we've done in the past, which comes from grants and taxes. Grants from, state grants, federal grants, and then taxes generated in our current taxing system or any other additional sources that the city would choose to create.
So what I heard earlier is that with our current taxing structure, that we basically don't have capital. Sorry. With our current taxing structure, we don't have capital money. We're barely keeping our maintenance up. So for the city doesn't have funds to put much into the capital side, the 100 and 150 million or whatever number I've heard of a few times. Then what? So, and the development fees don't seem to cover all of it. Mm-hmm. So, and yes, there's some things you can get from federal money and some other grant stuff, but seldom does that come by, fully funding. You've got to come up with some matching dollars and those other things that come with it. So I'm just trying to figure out where all that's coming from, because it just doesn't, I mean, you run one shows development and the money we have for our current TIP, and it shows it going worse.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the money we have. So you make run 3, and it says, well, it looks good, but how do you make that happen? And because if you made that happen, it would have been in run 1, because that's the plan with development fees and impact fees and all that stuff should have been in run 1. So run 3 sounds like it's just something I'd really like to have, but I don't know if that's possible.
I guess I'd say the discussion we're having here is focused on the private side of how to fund this part. I think the city council is going to have to grapple with this issue, and they will be getting to this issue either as part of adoption of this or perhaps early next year about how to fund the public side of this program. So I think council knows about this. It's been talked about when we first started talking to the city council a year and a half ago now about the simplified concurrency. Like the key fundamental assumption is if we're going to go simplified, it's transferring the responsibility from the private developer to fix these things to the public side, which is us, to do this. You can simplify things. You pay one fee and you're done. But someone else has to make these improvements to achieve this level of service, and that is coming the city's way.
And so that, I guess I would expect that run 3 would have a really clear dollar amount already attached to that, because that's what you're looking to accomplish, and that should be, well, if we're looking to accomplish and simplify this and keep it at least the same, why don't we have right now know if that's 100 million, 200 million, 300 million, why wouldn't we know what that is if that's what you're asking folks to approve?
I think council knows the number, right?
Yeah.
Because it's a council policy choice. Right.
And we've had the
So what's the number?
Well, I think the number is, like I said, somewhere around $250 million is the TIP, and
Is the current TIP?
the current one is about 100 million.
Right.
The proposed one to do this would be somewhere around 250 million. So
$150 million has to come from somewhere.
yes, yeah, and some of that, as in the past has shown, it does come from state and federal grants. Yes, they're drying up some, but they still are coming. So, for example, this road number 4, Costco just said we'll give $24 million-ish to help pay for that. The whole package is about $50 million, and the city is already receiving grants from the state I know of one of $9 million and another of $5 million. So there is some there is money coming to help fund much of that. And I think there are some other. It's largely paid for, that $50 million improvement, which is not just that. It's this, number 4, and number 4,8 right here. It's this package of improvements to help this whole
And
package
kinda
run there.
going back to my earlier question regarding county funding, has there been any reaching out to the county to see if maybe there's a possible amendment to their code so that new developments in counties will do an analysis of the impact on the city and possibly apportion some of those impact fees to the cities that they impact, even if it's not a formal interlocal?
That's what we had with the reciprocal agreement, and it just, we had it for years, but it just turned out that they were having some troubles with it, so we quit doing it because they just don't have any money to do much of anything. I mean, it's a super thought and it's a fair thought, but we just weren't getting any traction. The more we were working with them on it, the less money that they had, and it just, I mean, it's very logical, it makes sense, but they just are, you know, they couldn't come up with any of the money, so they wanted to not have the agreement anymore.
Yeah, and my thought is a little different. Rather than looking for county money specific to an interlocal, it would be kind of an additional push onto those developers where they don't just look at the county's impact fees, they do a county and the adjoining city that it impacts, and those fees are assessed to the developer, so kind of a bump in the on the developer end to make sure that they're accounting for those impacts, even if it's not a full.
Right, that's how it worked, didn't it, the reciprocal?
I think part of the reason that it may have gone away is that, well, King County up in Sammamish Plateau became City of Sammamish, so
Right.
that part of the interlocal agreement with King County was no longer needed because it became a city, and there have been efforts to reach out to Sammamish, and there could be again, we hope, to do that,
Right.
to create that interlocal agreement. And then where's the other part of unincorporated? It's south of
Just-
King County.
Yeah, which there really wasn't Miramont in that. We just weren't getting much. There was more administrative issues than any of the funds that we were getting from the Miramont, south of town.
It's a good suggestion.
But it worked well when we first had it, before Sammamish was here, it worked really well, but then it just sort of dried up.
So how does the process go? You do this modeling out for 30 years,
Mm-hmm.
and you have 100 trips. Are you going to allow those 100 trips before all of the improvements are being made, or how are you going to handle that?
So we are required to do the improvements to fix the impacts of those trips within 6 years of the development
Oh,
happening.
okay.
So
So it
that's
has
that,
to be- it
that's
has
that
to be
official
done.
answer.
So at some point in time, if you don't have those improvements done, then you're going to,
Then we would be in concurrent, we'd be out of concurrency, we'd be not in compliance. So there is a requirement, the city does have to start building roads, to build these road systems to achieve
Okay.
concurrency. Yeah.
anything else? So you might as well stay there or stay around. It is a open mic.
Public hearing, I think.
Public hearing, yes, and so I will open it up at this point in time for anybody who wants to make any comments on this particular part of the land use code amendments for transportation concurrency. And if there's anybody in the audience that would like to make a comment, would you please come to the microphone?
I like your glasses, Joan. Very nice. They go with your sweater.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. See, TV got to hear that.
Completely out of context, but go on.
Well, It's a public comment. My name's Connie Marsh, and I have a store at 1175 Northwest Gilman Boulevard, and live in Issaquah, and have done I don't know how many renditions of concurrency, and was sort of fascinated by the presentation. So I have a little bit of a different take on it, having sat through I don't know how many meetings on this. So one thing is a history. The interlocal agreement with the county ran into problems with the city because the interlocal fees that the county was charging to local businesses because of the impacts on the county sections of the road were very high. And there was a lot of fury, especially amongst the Front Street restaurants, for when they tried to do improvements and changes of use, that they were getting $15,000 impact fees from the county that they had no idea was coming, and they were being forced to pay before they would get their certificate of occupancy. My memory is that it was that made the city say that they didn't want to do the interlocal agreement, because the city portion was the city wasn't getting very much from the county, and the county was getting more from our very small businesses, and that's what killed it. I don't remember anything. I think it happened before the county lost all of their money to begin with, or maybe it was at the same time. So I have an entirely different memory of than what staff had said. I just got through an excruciating month and a half of going through the Costco development agreement, which went through in an ultra hurry because of the having to get the grant applications in this year and this year only, because there is likely to be absolutely no money next year or the year after for any transportation projects. And so people were working 14 hours a day to get that agreement put into place so that those applications could be put in at the very beginning of October, and that was pushing the deadline. And that was like pedal to the metal fury. So I also don't agree with the staff saying, well, maybe grant funding is drying up. If the rest of the city is talking about it, they're going to dry up. So how much of this is just one person saying one thing and one saying another? I don't know the answer to that question, but there is my interpretation of those. Now, Action Model Run 1 that was shown up there came about because in the SEPA analysis of the Central Issaquah Plan, they did a model run saying, well, what'll traffic be like if we agree to have this Central Issaquah Plan with all this increase of density? The model runs were based on older traffic numbers from 2007, and that model run came out saying, we are smoking. We have like one failure, and we are going to be awesome. It's going to be a thing of beauty. Then they updated the counts, and I asked the question. They said 2012, maybe 2013. And that 17 failures was the difference from, I think it was one failure to 17 failures. So they haven't gone through the whole SEPA analysis to adjust the new reality of that, but it is like, okay, we already adopted the Central Issaquah Plan, and we're saying we're going to have all this density, but we didn't quite have the numbers right, and so it's way worse than we thought. What are we going to do? And at the same time, you have this balance of how much can the citizens pay, how much can the developers pay, and the city has decided it's about half shares. So in any road project, say the TIP, which I believe is more like $300 million right now, the citizens or grant funding has to come up with $150 million given the period of time. Now, by 2030, unlikely we'll get the development or the roads built, but that was the theory of the Central Issaquah Plan. So as I watched them go through these different model runs, yes, a $400 million to $450 million was Model Run 2, and the last one was ratcheted back in order to make it be something more affordable, because When you have concurrency, then you also use those projects in your TIP to assess the new development share. And so that was starting to pop out at $19,000 per trip at that point in time with the old TIP. So who's going to pay that? Is it affordable? How much do these fees impact development coming into the city and actually creating the central Issaquah plan as we envision it? So that is when the discussion came about of, well, if we start exempting these heavily traveled intersections that have a lot of regional traffic and we just ignore them, is that going to then help us be concurrent without having to spend the $400 million? Because remember, we're getting those results with the exemptions. So it's, anyway, so that's sort of my history of how all of that came through. I hope that that is interesting. My concerns, as you got with the letter that I sent out, are we say we aren't counting these intersections, but that doesn't mean the cars aren't in those intersections clogging up traffic. And how bad do those intersections get before we heavily impact the quality of life in the city of Issaquah, because we can't get in and out and others can't either. And so I'm not really sure that that is an appropriate policy decision. The traffic counts. Newport Way today was backed up to Maple, you know, the Target intersection. As you were going south, it was stop and go traffic all the way down Front Street to Issaquah Hobart Road. And that isn't considered a failure in our current traffic counts. So I wonder how often they're going to count the traffic to make sure that you have an updated model so we don't have the same issue we had with the Central Issaquah Plan model run, because I agree, I don't think it's appropriately counted now. It also needs to be counted during the school year, and that needs to be put into policy too, because we all know we have 30% more traffic on the road during a school year than we do at any other point in time. And then nobody ever talks about the ability to actually change the amount of development that we're putting in the model and saying, you know what? We might have made a mistake in saying that we can actually accommodate this density of use, so maybe we need to ratchet back on that. Also, we have a situation where we have the entire Costco development agreement that just went through with no housing. And so some of the assumptions in these models are that we are going to have this mixed-use development with this whole taking cars off the road, and we aren't achieving that at this point in time. So maybe instead we need to be having a discussion about the reality of the situation, and some of the policy decisions need to be more closely linked with what is actually happening within those developments, not just assuming that everything is going beautifully. So what I see missing in here is I don't see language somehow totally requiring and funding the traffic counts and the modeling every 2 to 3 years to keep it updated. I don't see how we're going to get that money. I would like to see a long-term funding model so that we can actually see that there's even a likelihood of the citizens being able to provide that large quantity of money in order to fulfill our obligations. And I don't think that you all should be expected to pass this through tonight, because it is an extraordinarily important topic. One last thing, change of use for small business, which is one of those things where if you have even a $13,000 per trip impact fee and you have a change of use for a small business and you're putting 4 new trips on the road, that was 3, but 4. You were looking at an enormous amount of money for a small business to have to pay to expand or change their use or go into a retail store that's bigger so their restaurant can be larger. $45,000 extra dollars, $49,000 extra dollars for a small business to be able to expand in Issaquah unless you create some exemptions in some manner in this code. Okay, I realize that was a tremendous amount of information and I talked really fast and I apologize. I think it needs at least one more meeting for y'all to understand. I also think it needs public outreach because you notice I'm the only one here. Thanks.
But there are millions on television. Take them off. Seeing nobody else for public comment, I will close the public hearing and open it up for discussion. Or do you want to wait until we go over the transportation plan itself? You want to wait for discussion? Okay, we will.
They're separate.
Hmm?
So you could do whatever you're going to do with the code. Is that what
Right.
they decide? Oh, okay.
So we can either discuss the code now and make a decision, or we can discuss the transportation element and see with that if there are anything that we think should go in the code. And then discuss the code, whether we want to proceed on.
Okay.
Does that make
Okay.
sense?
Does that make sense?
Okay, so what do you guys want to do? Do you want to discuss and make a decision on what we do with what was presented tonight and with the input from Connie? Do we want to think about this and come back in 2 weeks, whenever our next meeting is, and add things, subtract things, do you want to have further discussion on this, or do you want to pass this on to the council saying that we approve this? And we think it's a good idea, written exactly the way it is.
I think we probably ought to continue discussing this now before we shift topics to transportation, I think.
Okay, so you want to discuss it now?
I think so.
Okay. So any other thoughts, any other questions, concerns? Carl?
Hi, David. You want to go back up there? Looking at what we're supposed to sign, it states identifies an additional capacity of 8441 vehicle trips. Is that now the bank?
Yes, that's the bank.
So somewhere out of whole cloth, we came up with 8441, not 8,500. Not 8,000, 8,441. So from now till 2030, I'm Joe Schmuckatelli, and I'm going to build a new department store.
Yes.
Okay? Somehow I determined that, and I don't know how, it's going to generate 100 trips.
Okay. You want me to?
So all I have to do is pay some amount of money times 100, and I will get a concurrency certificate.
Mm-hmm.
And the total now will be 8341.
Correct. Yes.
And this will go on for another 16 years. And at that time, those two levels come together, or depending on the amount of growth, we don't know what's going to happen. So it may end up being, we'll still have 8,000 trips in the bank in 16 years because nobody's developing.
You could have that. The key thing is, and I've said, there have to be regular updates every 2 to 3 years to kind of calibrate the development that we expected, and maybe it's different, or maybe it's over here versus over there. So this 8441 trip bank, we anticipate is going to be looked at every couple of years, and we'll adjust. Maybe it goes 84, and that 3 years it goes to 7,900, then it goes 3 years later to 86. But it's going to be moving. It's going to be regularly updated. But the idea is that over time it would draw down from that, and then to remove the mystery of it, the trips are calculated based on a manual that is used regularly in the
Right.
Institute for Traffic Engineers, ITE trip manual. So we post that on the website, so any potential developer can go there and say, oh, my use generates, it's 10,000 square feet times 2.3 trips per thousand, it generates 23 trips. There you go. And then the modeling that has created all this, that's what's created the 8441, not 8,500. But that's the a lot of work that's gone behind this computer traffic modeling.
I don't doubt there's not a lot of work that has gone beyond. So then theoretically, the 8441 should be able to be divided into the cost of all the improvements.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and then I'll add to what Connie said.
So the 250 million that we'd like to see, we divide by 8441,
That,
and that tells us how much
that is the
the
impact.
developer's going to pay for each of the trips, for each
Per
of those
trip.
100
That-
trips.
That is how it works, yes. And when she mentioned 19,000, I'll just say that was in September of 2013, so a year and a half ago. We had a presentation at council where the estimate at that time was 300 million, and then 150 million of that, roughly half would be developer. So you take the 8441, 150 million divided by 8441, and that's your trip amount. And at that time, the rough math showed between motorized and non-motorized fee of about 19,000 per trip. And a lot of people got excited about that. It's a high number. Now that is, I've been involved in this model. We don't know what the actual number is now, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be lower than that amount. But that is how it works. You take the TIP amount, the part that's responsible for by developers, divided by the trips, and that is the fee.
Okay.
Turn your mic on.
Yeah.
So that the money that the developer pays has to directly impact his property, so it's like a frontage improvements and all that, or does it actually go into a pot and it's?
It's the second part. It goes into a pot where the city then prioritizes where that money should be spent to best, most efficiently have all these intersections operate at the LOS that we're aiming for. But then there's an assumption embedded in that, and we need to stick with state law, be consistent, that when a person pays a fee, yes, I think there has to be a direct linkage to mitigating the impact of that development. But the argument or the reason here would be that, if a person improves an intersection, here's the mouse, over here, but your development is over here, by improving in one place, all these roads are intertwined and interconnected. There is a connection. It might not be as direct as it is today, but there is a connection.
And I think too, Paul, when you mentioned frontage improvements,
Yeah.
they still have to make their frontage improvements by law.
So that
doesn't go
count
away.
towards the impact fee.
Correct. That doesn't
That's
change.
a perfect point. Thank you.
Okay. So generally, I think, just my opinion, I guess, on this transportation concurrency is that, we live in an area that's, it's like we're a thoroughway, and, where some people are trying to get to Maple Valley or Sammamish or somewhere else. I live on south of town, and there's often times where I do want Issaquah Hobart Road to have 3 lanes, but I think overall I probably wouldn't want that if it was actually built that way. So I think just looking at it, it makes sense. I really like how it's written, and that's my opinion.
I will note on our proposed findings of fact on this issue, if we're voting on it today, under Section 2, Reasons for Action, Paragraph 2, it states in there the comment and appeal period has ended November 5th, which should probably be changed to will end November 5th if we're voting on it tonight.
Anything else?
Yeah, I guess I'm still a little concerned on shifting to a flat fee. It puts a burden on the city and by therefore the citizen that's going to be work. So I want to go back on some numbers because I'm surprised we're not seeing some pretty specific numbers with what you've got on dollars. But if you're at 19,000 a trip, is that if that would be the fee, that's really half the cost because somewhere someone made a decision that the developer only pays half, and so that the citizen automatically gets stuck with the other $19,000.
But, yes, and the decision, someone made the decision, the reason it's approximately half is that approximately half of the traffic on the roads today in the future will be caused by new development. By law, we can't ask developers to fix problems that already exist on the congested roads today or new growth that'll happen outside of us, the regional traffic, so that's the other half. So it's roughly half that are paid by the direct impact of new growth. The other half is by.
So I didn't get a chance to study all the Costco development agreement, but so they're putting up like 24 million or something like that, right? So that's half of what that decision, what that those costs would be, or is that because when you get a big development that does something and then they work into an actual agreement that often would be different than a small business owner could do, because it's a bigger project. And then there often is some differences that aren't always quite so balanced. So I'm looking at those kinds of things as well. But I'm concerned with flat fee putting that onus on the citizens to be then say we're going to come up with that 150 or so. Well, we're committing to match that, and we're already saying I'm not sure where that money's going to come from. So, I mean, I don't like to make a decision like that myself.
Can I add?
Without a whole lot more
Okay.
numbers backing up something. I mean, I say I'm not hearing
That's a fair
some things that are very specific. Is if you're going to do this, it's going to cost X, it's going to cost Y. There's this. I mean, I would expect when you're talking some things that are real numbers here, I would expect to see dollars. Traffic counts are great. I love them, and I know the science behind them, and that's fine. But you're asking us to say that we're going to accept something that has a dollar value to it, and we haven't talked about dollars at all. And those dollars to the citizens, to the small business, to the large business, and I think there's some information that I would need.
That was, we've talked about, or Connie brought up Costco.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of the biggest discussions we had at the Development Commission for the meetings we had, was on the funding.
Mm-hmm.
Costco says we're going to give you $24 million. The city has to come up with $26 million. Match that. Where's it coming from? Well, we're going to apply for grants. That's why we're pushing it so fast, because we got to get this money. And the lead question was, well, should we be pushing that fast just to get money? Maybe we're making a mistake. The argument then was, well, we'll go ahead. But what happens if the money doesn't come? And the argument back was, well, we already have $5 million from some grant.
Yeah.
And whoever balances the city's books had said, well, if we don't get a grant, we have the money available to fund this. Now we're looking at even more money. And we just don't know if it's going to be there.
Well, I guess past practice can help inform the future sometimes, not in the stock market, but in the past we have competed for grants, we have succeeded, right? The city roads have been built around the city for the last several decades. Grants, monies have existed and come from the state and the feds. And we anticipate, this is a period of at least 16 years to 2030, so we don't have the actual funding.
And I understand that
we
from prior
trust
history,
it will
but
happen.
you look at what's going on, not just in this county, but look in the state.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you read Danny Westneat's column on traffic that maybe we've gotten to the point now where finally the big roads are finally getting so congested that people are going to demand that something be done. And if that happens, the available money for Issaquah and little towns is going to evaporate because it's all going to go to be fixing I-5 and 405. And then we're stuck. The money bothers me. That's the bottom line.
It's a fair question, I guess.
Ray?
If I had to vote tonight, I would abstain for several reasons. Number one, we have not come up with a solution to mitigate the existing traffic jams. If you were to go on Front Street from 4 o'clock on to 7, it's a parking lot. If you were to go on to Issaquah Hobart Road, same way. If you were to go on Newport Road, same way. I'm not satisfied that we've come up with either the money or the plan to build the infrastructure that would support the additional growth that we're talking about. So I couldn't in good conscience vote for what is being proposed. I would abstain.
So can I add another item, or just make a point? In this work program, we've been working with the council. The primary focus has been on this concurrency, which is funding the private side of this. There is a second section of the work program at the council level to talk about public funding strategies. So, and that was raised by Randy Young, our concurrency consultant, back September a year ago, that if you go down this path, you also need to do the public funding strategy. So that is part of the work program. Council's very aware of that. It's kind of going on a parallel path, and this part is a little ahead of that part. But I've heard that it's intended to be talked about very soon at the council level about what are the public funding strategies to fund the public side of this. And we've made them very aware. If you make this commitment, you know, you've got to follow through on this. Otherwise, this whole thing, you know, doesn't work without that.
Joan, what exactly are our options tonight in terms of adopting, not adopting, waiting for more information?
You have your choice to basically wait and ask. I think if you're going to wait and ask for that you need something else to make a decision, you're going to have to be specific in what you ask the city for. Otherwise, I mean, this is something that you have to take some faith in where it's going. So you're not going to get every answer specifically to come out exactly the right way. But you can wait for another meeting, ask for specifics, or you can basically say, yes, we agree with what's going on, we're going to send it back to the council, where they still have the opportunity to make changes. It's just your recommendation as commissioners. They're taking your ideas and thoughts and putting it into where they plan to go. You could come back and say, I want to know the other part. I want to know the money part. Where is this? I want a more detailed. So you have this part of it, which I would assume that the council has been working on and has spent a long time and basically agrees with what's here. So there's not going to be many changes to this. But if you want to see the other part of where they're planning to come up with the money before you make a recommendation, you can do that. But the budget will be approved. Does this have anything to do with the budget? Does it have to be approved by any?
It has budgetary pieces to it if the farther they go, you know, with the public funding piece.
Okay, so I think if you want more information, you probably have one more meeting to discuss it, but no more than that.
Right, and I don't think it'd be dependent on their next year's budget for 2015. They have to pass here in the next month. I don't think this would have.
It will.
No.
In the future, it will.
In the future, right. But this, taking action tonight will not stop the council from, signing on an agreed budget for 2015.
Correct, you're correct.
So there's no pressure for us to do something tonight or next week.
Well, no, there's no pressure per se, but the piece you have to remember as advisors is, and you've done this in the past, is you have a narrow focus as Planning Policy Commission members on the advice you give to council. But you can move beyond that to say that, that respectfully you hope that they look at the public funding and the cost for small businesses, let's say, and the pieces that are outside your purview, to let them know that you've heard these issues. You know they're maybe not completely part of the amendment that you're looking at in the narrow sense of your role, but that it concerns you because you're part of the community. And so in that, you've done that before, it sort of stepped outside your role as citizens and said, you know, respectfully, council, we hope that you look at these 5 things. However, we're okay or not okay with the amendment before us. So it's kind of a 2-part recommendation. The part that's on the amendment before you and the part that you may have concerns or ideas or changes on things that they're looking at in another set, in another sequence. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and Dave, would you be able to get us, I think, you know, and I have kind of the same concerns. I want to see what the projections look like, both if we stay in our current state of funding model, what the new funding model will look like, and then that tip run 3, I think, are the 3 pieces that I would need specifically to give an up or down or on this. Is that something that we'd be able to get by our next meeting?
And is that completely relevant, though, to the amendment? I mean, you can, in the way I read it, it has ramifications to the big concurrency and impact fee piece that the council's working on, but our charge is the amendment to the land use code that structures how the process of it.
Well, and exactly, and I don't want to adopt that necessarily if the numbers don't bear it out. So it's one of those things. I mean, it's putting the cart before the horse to say if we make these changes, it's going to put us down a path that we might not want to go on if the numbers don't bear it out. So I think I would want to see the numbers, and I believe Bill's of the same ilk in that regard.
I can't believe that the city doesn't do some kind of financial forecasting and they have numbers out to 2030 on how they plan to fund their major projects, which include transportation. You know, I listened to Mayor Butler's presentation for the budget, and in order to meet 2015 requirements, he's raising B&O taxes and he's raising property taxes. That's part of the public. And I think we need to know what the city financial forecast is when we implement a plan like this. And I can't believe they don't have those numbers someplace.
Well, I'm sure they do at the council level, because it's
Yeah.
a council piece to look at. The PPC isn't charged with looking at financial forecasts and budget. That's a council purview, because they're elected officials. You guys are chosen to advise the council on specific land use pieces. So that the numbers exist, it's just a different group that's balancing those, just like the budget. It's council and the mayor's office that are trying to figure that out.
And to add to that, I could even say, we know there's a certain amount, and we're gonna know that in the next couple of weeks or so, but we don't know now, and we're not gonna know how we're gonna fund, you know, say $150 million from now to the next 16 years. We're not gonna know that next week or next month or next year. It's just, you get money as time passes and
Right.
the available funds happen.
Right, and
We're gonna
that's
have
why we put
strategies.
into it that you have to update it every 2 or 3
Yeah.
years, because then you know where you are on the journey. We would never just adopt the finances and the projects and then wait 10 years to see how we're going, because we just know that as a government, you have to correct the course every couple of years, because things cost more and less, you get more or less development, your retail sales tax goes up and down, and so it's all of it's a moving target, so that's why we have to redo things every couple of years.
Did you see the list, the TIP, and broken down how much money, when they expect to get it? Did you see that? chart? Did they see that?
Yeah, we've had that.
I know we had
Yeah,
it.
we
I'm
have.
just asking if they've seen it.
No.
I think that would help them
Yeah.
understand that this is where they think you're getting the money, and if this comes in faster than this, then this project will go up higher, and in order to get it done, so.
Okay.
Yeah, that would have happened before the 7 new ones were here. 'Cause that's
Yeah,
in
well, that's
April.
what I was asking for.
Oh, you're asking for the chart.
I was asking for the chart so
Oh.
they could understand, and then somebody
And we
would.
did
It's on the
that-
website.
And we did that on the 25th
That's
when
what
you
I'm
were gone.
asking.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've seen it.
And I know the TIP it shows projects funded for the next 6 years. It's a 6-year TIP.
Right.
What we're talking about is the next 16
No,
years.
I understand,
You'll have a
but
part
it
of it.
works the same way. I mean, it still works basically kind of a general idea of how it's proposed to be funded and where it's coming from. So we are not the council, we're just recommending this particular, does it make sense the way it is? Not based on will it ever be funded, because that's not what we're looking at. We're just looking at what's here this evening.
But I guess for me, it's, you're totally changing a funding mechanism, and you're asking us to agree to that change of, project specific to, banking stuff and building a flat fee structure versus that's what you're trying to change here, really, is the structure on how you collect impact fees.
This code amendment is just how to collect fees on the developer's side to fund the developer's impact. It is
Right.
not, this code amendment, like we're saying, there's a different scope at the council level of how to fund the public side. But this, trip bank and the impact fee, all that is just the developer's portion.
But that's what we're actually voting to change, is that structure.
That structure.
Right. And so what comes to mind, the question of that structure, is that that's done in a way that is working, okay? So that you've got someone did all this, you've done all this stuff to come up with that structure, to come up with the numbers with the 8,400. All these, there's the numbers there, so there's a lot of stuff behind it. And I'm just want to make sure from our standpoint that we're shifting a structure that I'm fearful of, that the burden we'd be putting it somewhere where it's more difficult to deal with. And particularly where it's something where, like you say, I always see where, but big developers have a whole lot more room to negotiate than little developers and small business folks. And so they can get it in there, and little guy has to pay, the $50,000 or whatever, and the other one can pay, maybe 40%, or something like, because they have there's different negotiations, and we know that. So how does that come out at the end, that everybody's got the balance, and that we're saying that the city is going to accept all that? We're going to take those funds, the flat fee, and how is that determined, and that's, and then we're just going to make sure we do our part. I've seen that before. That hasn't worked.
So running that continuous, if we knew that we couldn't get you the information that you needed to make the decision to change the process from site-by-site concurrency runs to a flat fee, your vote might be that you're not comfortable voting yes on this because there's not enough information for you to make a decision to change the way we think about concurrency, knowing that we wouldn't be able to give you any more information in the next month that would allay the thought that you have on how much more information would you need to change the way we collect fees. Is that, because as Dave said, we're not going to have that information in a month.
Well-
Because council is still churning the numbers and churning the financial forecasts and churning the list estimates. And so we won't be able to give you the information that will allow you to feel comfortable that we have all those numbers in place.
Well, has there been any sort of studies or analysis on this change that we could look at? Any sort of modeling that's been done? Or was this just written kind of out of the blue with assumptions? my guess would be that something's been done ahead of time before these were written in.
Right, there's been months of,
Yeah, there's hours of, so the video, there's, these slides right here come from work sessions with the council in June and July primarily, and we had one in September. We were here for hours here, 3 hours each night, I think. And tons of work went into that to study, you know, all of the things that we're summarizing tonight here. So I don't know how we could summarize all that in a,
right, and that's the hard part with your role, is that council's role is the huge enchilada, and, you know, yours is the code amendment piece that changes the way we do it. And so that's the hard part is, and the funny thing, at least funny, funny, is the last time we did concurrency, you guys were the water bearers. You guys did the model runs. You guys talked about add these 5 projects, take away this development. I mean, and council was concerned because they thought, you know, they're doing all the pieces, and so they said the next time that we'd updated concurrency, they wanted to be the ones that got to actually do all those huge pieces, because by the time it came to the council, they were like, well, why did PPC choose this and that and this? And so we decided to sort of flip back to that they got to do the huge technical, terribly technical pieces of, you know, which 10 trips and how many trips do they have and how many millions do they cost and what year is it coming in, instead of you guys. So that could be a good thing or a bad thing.
Well, and I
You
think
guys
that leaves
don't
us
do-
in the boat that they were in during the last go-around, where they don't have enough information to make a decision.
Well,
or
they do, because
they-
they've been living and breathing it, sadly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
We
but
have-
last
But
time,
you
whenever
haven't
we had
been,
done the
right.
work.
Right.
And now it's switched, and we're in that boat where we have, you know, a 10,000-foot summary, but we don't know why necessarily one funding model is better than the other.
Right.
And that's exactly what we're voting on.
Well,
What's
it's
the
more
next-
the structure of it, right.
Our
it's more
next
the structure of
meeting
it, yeah.
is-
The 13th of November.
And that's the open house.
It's a public hearing, it's a little different now. It's a public hearing on the capital facilities element.
Okay. Which includes this? Does not
No.
include it. Then, okay, and so obviously there's some question and some heartburn with adopting or moving this on. So we have to do something to move it along, which means another meeting or more information.
Or you can vote no.
And
PPC
a
voted
fourth
no before.
option, a fourth option has been talked about. You could vote however you want to vote and say, we have these concerns, suggestions that we want the council to look into.
I
Move there.
understand that. Not more necessarily more information, but time to put your thoughts together for what you think you might say, yeah, I like this, but I want this answered. Give me some help here. What is it?
Is
you
there
wanna do?
another option that we might consider along the lines of adopting the amendment, but we amend it first to address some of these concerns?
You can add that, yes, with those reservations, right?
Sure.
Yeah, that's just what Trish has said earlier.
You know, the funding issue, the impact on small business, if we
Yes.
put those in the amendment, not as a discussion topic afterwards. I don't know if
Okay.
that'll make some of the
Someone
commissioners
would need to make a
more
motion on
comfortable.
the change that you'd like to see in it, so that everyone could discuss it.
Can I help maybe?
Sure.
There's 2 slides left that
Oh,
I
okay.
didn't, that might help, just help you here, I don't know. But it's more schedule-y stuff, and how do I get out, see, escape? And then, I'm sorry. And to just like next steps if, so, I just want to say, here's this kind of the picture that we've been working under. Council's been working on this since April of 2013 till now. We've been here the last, 2 times here. There are plans for council work sessions November 10 and the 8th, and going to 2 committees. So there's 4 more touch points with council if it stays on the schedule, and that's, and we have been outreaching to the business community throughout to the chamber, CEO, and the Master Builders Association. And if it continues on the schedule, it'll be a January 1 effective date. But what I want to add also here is that November 10 is, we anticipate rolling out at least what the impact fee proposal will be, along with the TIP cost list on the 10th to the council. That's Monday the 10th. I guess PPC is the 13th. But what we won't roll out that 10th or the 8th is this funding package of how we're going to pay for this public part. I just quite sure that is not in the administration or council's plans right now to do that at this time. So we're not going to have that information if you're looking for it in the next week or two. We will have more information after the 10th. I don't know if it'll address your concerns tonight. So there's that.
Yeah, and you know, I don't know that my question goes more towards, you know, long-term funding plan. I'm not that specific. I just want to know how this is going to look under the current fee structure versus the proposed fee structure in terms of, you know, are developers getting off the hook, or is it going to stay roughly the same in terms of impact fees? I mean, I just want to know how it was modeled as compared to old versus new, not necessarily the specifics as far as, you know, 5, 10, 20-year projections.
Okay. Well, those are in PowerPoint. Those are in the presentations discussion that happened at the council work session in June and July and September.
If I had that, I think that would go, I mean, if I even saw those, it would go a long way to getting my vote on it.
So it sounds like there's going to be more information on the 10th prior to our next meeting.
But it's
that we
not
can-
the information you're looking for.
No, it is some of this. It is some of the information I'm looking for. Definitely some of it. So, I mean, I think that's important. And so I suggest we wait for that.
Do we have a motion?
That's a motion, I'll second it.
That we don't vote on this tonight.
We wait till the next meeting after we obtain that information.
And I want to clarify, state again on the 10th to council, you're going to state it again what information you're going to have, so everybody can hear that.
We'll have information, we plan to have information, if it stays on schedule, of what the possible impact fee amounts will be for the traffic, and there's a non-motorized impact fee. And there's parks fees as well, but that's way outside the scope of what we're working on.
Right. So you have a proposed dollar amount of impact fee. You said something about you'd have a more. I thought you said you have more of a detail on the expanded TIP into the future or whatever.
Well, that's what bases the fee.
So
there will be a list of road improvements with.
So we'll be able to see those costs, because that's where those costs are coming from. But we'll be able to see those projects as well, and cost of those projects.
Those projects are what were up on the map there, yeah, but you
Right.
can see them.
Yeah, but right now they're a rectangle to us. They don't tell me what they are, how much they are, right? So what some of those are. So see that as well.
David, do you have staff obviously wants to shift to this simpler process because theoretically it's saving the city money in the processing, right?
Saving the city money.
Well, if the process right now is that the developer goes through trip analysis and then the city goes and they go through trip analysis, then you end up meeting, all that takes staff time, money,
Yes,
and we're eliminating that.
yes,
So that goes in the plus column.
absolutely. And I'm excited for that. I mean.
Yeah, so that's the basis for wanting to shift. So there should be some substantial savings to change the system to the new system.
Right.
it's
I'm
not
not.
And that, I haven't seen the money, I haven't seen any, how that's changing. If on the 10th you're going to be able to say, the trip costs are now 19, 17, 15,000 or whatever it is,
Mhm.
do you have a an average figure for what they're costing now under the existing system, what it'll be under the new system? Is it markedly different, or is it each project ended up being, you know, an entity into itself?
Yeah, the average, I think the cost per trip today, under today's system, if I recall, is somewhere around $3,000 per trip.
$3,000.
$3,000. And we know, so a year and a half ago, a rough ballpark was 19,000, and that was combining, I think it was 17,000 a trip for traffic impact fee, and then the proposal is to add a non-motorized fee as well. That adds, at the time, to 19,000, but that was based on rough gross numbers, and based on what I've seen, that's coming, I'm going to say way down, but coming down. So there's a big gap between 3 and 19.
And as
Right.
a
Right.
comparison, Sammamish's transportation impact fee is
14,500 or so, almost $15,000 per trip is Sammamish today.
right, and
They're
ours
the-
is 3,000.
Yeah.
So-
How are they doing it? The same way that we're doing it now, or are they doing it under a bank system?
I'm not sure how they're doing
Yeah,
it.
theirs is a little.
So Carl said something I don't, and you said yes, and I don't know if that sounds right, doesn't sound right to me. Determining the number of trips that your development is going to have is, he says that's going to be simplified. That's not, because it's still going to be up for controversy, because I'm going to say it's only 2, and you're going to say it's 10. There's nothing, I mean, you're still, that modeling and coming to agreement
No,
is
it's
still
gonna
up,
be
wait, hang on, it's still up for debate. The dollar amount per trip would be set, but right now, I mean, you're going to tell a developer, I mean, you have to still look at their project to come up with a number
Yes.
of what that is.
But there-
That's done on the standard. That's a-
Yes,
Right.
done on, it is actually done on a standard today. It's the Institute of ITE manual. There's a nationwide manual that says a shopping center generates 2 trips per 1,000, a house 1 trip per house. There's a standard. We would keep using that standard, and now you just say, I have a, like I said, you have a project of 10,000 square feet. The manual says it generates 1.5 trips per 1,000. That's it. There is no, I mean, yes, people will always argue, and they argue now, and they'll argue then. But if it really is a house, and they're going to say it's a shopping center, we say, no, it's a house.
So
No
what's,
argument.
and if you're just changing the how you develop that dollar amount per trip, okay, from 3,000 to 10,000 or whatever, that's different than a code change, because that you could do just by figuring out what the cost, I mean, what your cost is. That's what you should develop. You do now. Right now, you're using 3,000 for whatever reason. You've done your math and you've come up that it's 3,000. Now, you know, I mean, that's a big jump. I mean, I don't understand how it can go 1 year from 3,000 to the next year to 10 or 15,000. I mean,
It's been a long time since we've updated as part of that.
well, that's
Yeah.
the problem. So, I mean, that's a different issue. I mean, you can update that number anytime without a plan change. I mean, you just have to do the math and figure it out. So, you know, the banking part is a little, I see that gives the city a little more freedom to not be right on top of that property, that we can go down the street a little ways and do something. So that concept is good, because we can sometimes have a more effect, you know, 3 blocks away than we can right in front of that property. That's a good concept. And so how you develop the cost of whatever that is per unit,
Yeah.
that's not a code change, right? I mean, you can just do that right now.
Maybe I'm thinking, here's another part that I didn't explain tonight. I was trying to stay up here, but in today's project, in today's methodology, there is a concurrency process to look at what is the development's impact on the citywide system. There's also an impact fee, traffic impact fee. There are 2 different things today. So I haven't said this. The simplified thing merges the 2 ideas together into one fee. So today, a person pays a traffic impact fee based on the 3,000-ish per trip and that standard thing. They also go over here and have their traffic engineer model the system for LOS impacts, and then have to come up with a list of projects to fix those impacts. And then our traffic engineer may disagree with them, and you have that whole thing. That is totally separate from paying an impact fee. So you have two lists of fees and projects, but then it gets complicated because if this list of road projects to maintain the LOS happens to overlap with this list of road projects that the impact fees pay for, then a person may get credit from this fee for this improvement. And then another thing is the person may say, well, we want to fix this LOS impact by adding a fifth lane over here. But under today's central plan vision, we've said, no, we don't want 5 lanes here. We want pedestrian-friendly, narrower streets. We're going to end up with improvements that we don't want. So I guess my point is, today there are two systems. They don't quite mesh. Paying an impact fee today is pretty simple. And in the future, it'd be simple. It's this complicated modeling, site-specific of each project that is complicated. And our traffic engineer argues with their traffic engineer about they disagree. Each has their own motives. And it's a burden. It takes time, it costs money on the developer side and the staff side, and we want to get rid of that. Put them all together, you pay a fee. Instead of arguing about these improvements, we've done our model citywide. The city says we want to see this big vision. And we're going to take control of our destiny, of our vision of streets in the city and have it this way. That's kind of my blurb of the big reason why we're doing this.
Should have led with that.
And Bill, I think you also convinced me just by saying, under this old system, we could change the fees to match our needs, and under the new system, we could change those flat fees to meet our needs too. So I think I'm actually ready to vote. I don't know if we still have that other motion to abstain.
We have a motion on the floor. The maker of the motion can choose to withdraw the motion. Does the maker of the motion want to withdraw the motion? Otherwise, we will go ahead and vote on the motion.
No, I'm leaving it there. I'd still rather wait till the next meeting when I get a little more information and
Okay, and that's a motion to abstain, correct?
Not to abstain.
Or I'm not to abstain, but to table.
To table the vote, yes.
Table the motion. So all those in favor of voting on the motion that is presented?
There was no second. There was no.
There was a second.
So there was? Oh, okay. I didn't hear that. Sorry.
This is waiting till the next meeting without any additions or requests. It's just a straight motion, right?
No, I said we're going to get the more information that's going to be presented to the council. We'll go to the council meeting. We're going to get that additional information.
So that's part of the motion?
Yes. Sorry.
Okay. So all those in favor of the motion as stated, please say aye. All those opposed?
1, 2, 3. They're gonna raise their hands.
Abstain. So there are,
Was it 4? I couldn't tell. I couldn't hear the yeas. Was it 4-3?
it was 4-3. And I didn't vote.
Okay, and Ray is so can we see a show of hands, because I missed the voices? This was to vote tonight would be how, who?
No, do the first one first, do the motion first, which is to extend it.
All those in favor of voting yes for the motion as it is stated, of delaying the decision till our next possible meeting, I don't know if we can do it on the 13th, the next meeting with input from the council work session on November the 10th. With that, all those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand.
1, 2, 3. Okay.
Opposed?
1, 2, 3, 4. Okay.
So the motion fails.
Right.
Now we have to do something with this.
All right.
Yes.
I would make a motion to adopt the findings of fact with one amendment to section to paragraph 2 regarding the grammatical change
okay.
as far as the appeal period. Do I have a second?
Okay.
So the motion is, and it's been seconded, that we approve this as stated with only the grammatical change. Is that the motion?
That is the motion.
And we have a second. Well, we had a second. So all those in favor of the motion as is stated, please raise your hand.
4. Okay.
So it's 4. Are those opposed? 4 to 3.
4 to 3. No, you haven't voted.
I haven't voted.
How did you get your tie right?
So Ray, have you voted?
Okay, so
Okay, so it's a tie vote.
did you vote?
I didn't vote.
Okay.
There are 9 people. If
Did
9
you-
people are going to vote, there shouldn't be a tie.
There shouldn't be a tie. Oh, because you don't want to vote?
Well, if I have to vote, I feel like the whatever.
The vice president.
Yeah, the vice president writing and said, I vote yes.
Well, right, that's why we're asking her to be the vice president. I'm sorry, I missed it. We were talking
We're talking
judicial.
politics.
I vote yes, so it's 5 to 4.
5 to
So
4
then the
passes.
motion
That
carries?
passes.
Okay. And there was nothing else added to the findings, right? Because that was the motion.
That was what the motion was,
Other than the typo.
except the
The
correction
typo,
for
right,
the,
Okay.
okay, with that, thank you, Dave.
Thank you very much.
I think we will eventually have more information, and we certainly can ask for it. And if there's a problem, I think you can have a recommendation, a further recommendation to send if indeed we have the opportunity ever to ask for it, right?
True.
Yeah.
True. And you can certainly attend or are they televised, Dave, the council?
Work sessions,
Work
yes.
sessions? They are televised?
Televised.
Okay.
You can attend them too, right here.
Right, but on
not
the
done.
10th and the,
More stuff.
yes.
Okay. Can't go, we're going to tie you to that seat.
If you need to, you can.
If you have to go, you have to go.
I have a order kind of question. Is we set agendas and time limits, and if we don't get to them for various reasons, in the past, you just have gone on to whatever. Is that the standard mode?
Yes.
Or is it that, you have to do the agenda however long it takes, or you say, we'll
Well, I
continue
think-
working on this? I just wondering, because I haven't heard anything one way or the other.
We always have had the tendency to let everybody say their piece and get everything settled. So, even though you put a time limit on the agenda, I think that's just a, hope. Yeah, it's an estimate in time. It's never going to
So
do
we're
that.
easy to go another hour or two if we need to.
Yeah, we could.
Okay, because I got lots of questions.
Or longer.
Oh, dear.
Or longer.
Where's the food and the, okay, so we're going to hand it over to Kristen. We're going to talk more about transportation.
Now's a good time.
So So this is what we've discussed before, right?
It is.
This is just to go over the changes that we made, basically?
Just the concurrency policies,
Right.
right?
So I wasn't really kidding. Dave is going to talk just for a second about the concurrency stuff. I would like to apologize. Most of the focus getting this packet together was on getting all the maps for this and concurrency, so some additional maps together, and I realized tonight that some of the discussions were left out, but there were 3 of them that were left out. They'll be included later. The only policies that were added were the concurrency policies, and most of those have been discussed tonight with the exception of one, and the policy is, yes, is it C? C, is that where I'm going? Yes, that's the one. I should have got there. It's C4.
Yeah.
Right here. Achieve a 10% multimodal increase in Central Issaquah and a 3% increase outside Central Issaquah by 2030. So a multimodal increase means that you are getting that many people, 10% of their people, out of single occupancy vehicles. So people are no longer driving in their private cars by themselves. They are walking, they are commuting from home, or telecommuting, they are taking a bus. Any form, they are going at different times of the day, because when you refer to this 10%, it's during peak hours. So that's what this 10% is. We're trying to achieve 10% more people, trying to get 10% people out of their cars in the Central Issaquah area and 3% more outside of their cars from where it is now in the rest of the city. And that's just from where it is now. And right now, our goals were initially, from a long time ago, 2005, our goal was that 7%, that there be a 7% mode split in the entire city, which meant that 7% of the people were not riding in single occupancy vehicles. And the Central Issaquah goal was that there was a 17% split. So 17% of the people were not riding in single occupancy vehicles. From what our consultant has said, Torsten, is that we've already exceeded those goals. So now we're just saying we just want to do 10% more and 3% more from where we are now. So that's the only policy that you haven't talked in. If you need more details, Dave's here.
So my only question is this policy per capita or just numbers as of today, that 10% number?
Numbers as of today.
Okay.
So I think that's the only policy that we really wanted to talk about. The rest of it is background and discussion. Like I said, 3 of those were left out. I don't know what happened. They will be in next time you see this. But I also wanted to talk about the maps, though. So unless you have anything else for Dave, are there any questions? I'll move on to maps. I guess I covered it for you.
Thanks.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you for answering all of our questions today.
She's a lot faster than me.
All right. Here we go. Maps. So the maps were included this time. One of the reasons that we've had to wait on them was because of concurrency and pulling together what was there. We were also waiting on a project that's been put together that was called Walk and Roll Issaquah, which is a pedestrian and bike guidance document to help fill in some of our blanks with our existing documents and help figure out some ways to implement some of the non-motorized stuff. So I'm going to go over the maps that you have. The first one that you have is the roadway classification and inventory. These are there because they're required by the state. The state wants to know what roads we have and how those roads are classified. So collector arterials are a little busier. They collect all the traffic off of local streets, and then you go on up. Minor arterials collect traffic from collectors and so forth and so on. They just get busier and busier. So that's required by the state. This is the one that Dave has been talking about all night. This is the 2016 year project map of motorized projects that are proposed, that have been proposed through the model runs, through Model Run 3. There are numbers on here that are all associated with the table that is still being fixed right now. But that's what that one is. These are all based.
Say that again about the table?
Oh, there's a table that goes with this that will have monies attached to it and descriptions of the projects, and that's just being updated right now. I don't have the table to show you. Okay. The next map, this one you don't have. I wanted to show you where these things came from. So right now, this is our existing comprehensive plan non-motorized map. It was developed through a public process. We had a task force. It was done in 2004 and 2005, so it's relatively dated. It does not include in any of Central Issaquah in here. Whoops. The next map are the proposed Central Issaquah projects, non-motorized projects. These were developed through, they were adopted in the Central Issaquah plan. They were also established by a task force, and as well as public input that we had throughout the Central Issaquah process. These have just been in the standalone document in the Central Issaquah plan, and so now we're going to incorporate those into the Central Issaquah plan. So these are the projects that were a result of the public participation in 2013-2014 that were the walk and roll Issaquah projects. There were 13 of them that were on the list. There were a little over 100 that were done, came out of the process, but we prioritized those, pretty much bang for the buck type things, and they could range anywhere from $7,000 to $5 million. We have cost estimates for these as well, but it was kind of a bang for the buck kind of thing. But those were the top 13 projects that were picked. Those have all been rolled in to our 2015 comprehensive plan map of proposed projects that you all have. They may add capacity, they may not add capacity. It's just creating a better system, a complete, comprehensive system. And out of this will be the proposed non-motorized mitigation projects for which we will be able to receive impact fees. So they're part of the proposal that Dave has been working on is impact fees for non-motorized projects. And the ones here that are numbered are those that are a part of that process. They, whether or not they could be included on the list, they had to add capacity. They had to be located in areas where density is planned. They have to provide safety improvements. Those were some of the criteria. There were 7 criteria, and that's how those were picked to be on this map that will also be in the comprehensive plan. Okay. Any questions about those? Joan? Okay. All right. So these maps are currently in the comprehensive plan, and they're not going to change for a while, at least maybe by the end of this process, but probably not until 2016, 2017. And part of that is because transit's so in flux right now. Between Metro and Sound Transit and Route 200 and everything else that the city's trying to figure out, we just said, let's just leave these alone for now and not try and guess. And we'll fix them when we have a better idea of the way transit's going to go. So we have a transit inventory map that shows everything that is still in place, a transit circulation and classifications plan that shows where we want transit routes to go, where we wanted local routes to go, where the regional routes will go. And lastly, a 20-year transit and transit supportive projects and programs map. So these were projects and programs that PPC came up with back in 2007, I believe, that they wanted the city to implement. Part of this was from the 2002 transit needs study that the city had. So, but again, these won't change for a while. And that's all I have. Do you all have any questions?
I do.
I know.
I have a couple quick questions.
Sure.
I want to go back to, find it in the stuff here. So, in relating to transit and so forth, and I brought this up last time, and I guess it feels very awkward to me, and you told me I was wrong, but I don't think I am. We have high capacity transit in this plan.
Right.
And, you know, I check with Sound Transit, I talk to them, and their 2030, 2040 plan, you know, has a possibility of, at some point in time, transit may come out this way. This plan is for how many years?
This one is through 2035.
Right. So, that's not even on their chalkboard yet.
Right.
And so, and the ones they're building right now that they actually have funding for and are under construction are not going to be in operations till 2023.
Right.
And we're way out beyond that, and it's at least another 10 years from the time you start thinking of something, getting it close, if not more so. So the fact that, to 20 years from now, we're not going to have light rail out here. I mean, it's not going to be there. So the fact that to put it in as something that looks like we're going to have it just feels off to me. And I know, I mean, it's a possibility in the future, but it's not something that really weighs in here. And so it just feels like.
Well, light rail won't be here in 20 years. It
Yeah,
won't.
it won't.
And we're talking high capacity transit. We're not necessarily talking light rail. It could be a rapid bus transit system. So PSRC hasn't guaranteed, Sound Transit hasn't guaranteed that it's going to be a light rail. It could be just a high capacity bus transit system that runs separately. It won't be here in 20 years. But if we don't put it in our plans, then they won't put it in their plans. If they don't see that we are anticipating it or hoping for it or planning for it, then they won't put it in their plans. And they've told us that.
Yeah.
So we need to have it there. It doesn't hurt to have it there.
Okay, but I mean, our goal is to increase percentage of trips made by transit, including high-capacity transit.
Right.
There's no physical way you can do that.
Today-
It's not going to be there. So, and so it just kind of, I understand what you're saying, and we can leave it. I just want to say that again. It just feels awkward that we're saying we have a goal of doing something that we're totally incapable of doing.
Part of it is the collaboration with the other regional partners that we have with Sound Transit and the Puget Sound Regional Council, is that when they put it in their vision and they put Bellevue and they put everybody in there, and we were part of that. We're certainly out there in the years, but if we didn't come back and say, wow, you guys are recognizing that we're on I-90 and we should have something like that someday.
Okay.
And so we're trying to do our part of the collaboration, even though you're right.
Okay, so that's a different
It's
answer
sort
than
of like paying for college, you know.
And that's a different answer than you said last time. So I just wanted to clarify that, because you said no, we're going to have transit, and and I'm saying no, it's not. So if that's the only, I just want to clarify. The only reason we're putting it there is to note that we do want it eventually, but it's not going to be in my lifetime.
Right, and it's recognizing the collaboration that Puget Sound is hoping that we're going to have it too, because we're on I-90.
Right. Just on a quick note, above policy C4 you're talking about,
Yes.
and the one above that C3, there's question marks in the middle of the sentence.
Oh, yeah, right. We weren't sure if it was element or plan that needed to be there, so we need to fix that. Thank you. Yeah. It was just the last word that was being questioned, plan or element.
And this kind of a side note, I like your rock and roll plan. Is that what stage is that again right now?
It's done. It's done. It's not a plan. I keep trying to make that clear. It's not a plan. But it is going to council committee. It's going to land and shore on November 6th, just to asking them to pass a resolution to implement what is in that plan. So the plan has the projects that are in here. The request is to put those projects into the TIP and into the comprehensive plan. The document has suggested policies, and all of those policies have been taken and put into the comprehensive plan. So there needs to be some closure on that and say, yes, this is our guiding document that we're going to have, that we're going to use to help us implement
Any chance
non-motorized
I can get
projects.
a copy of that, or
It is on the website.
is it? Okay.
It is, yes. I can send you the link if you'd like.
Well, if it's on our Issaquah website.
It is. It's if you go
Weird
under
place.
if you go on the front page and go under major projects, it's the top one right there, the bike and ped.
Okay.
Okay.
Concurrency's on there too as a major project.
Yeah.
While you were browsing.
Right.
Anything else?
I have more, but they all want to go.
Okay.
I think this is the latest that the new groups have done.
I don't. I'm done. No, that was just.
Good job. Excellent. We're done. Good job. Can you sign this for me? Is that fine?